Hey guys, it's Vince. Today in this video we're going to be discussing setting soft limits. I've seen quite a few representations done online, whether it be videos, blogs, whatever it may be. I'm just not real happy with the presentations that I've seen. There's a lot of missing information, especially the correlation between soft limits and setting offsets. Also, there's some error messages that I think you guys need to see to understand what you may experience when you're actually running your system yourself for the first time. And honestly, I think there's this real convolution and misinformation online as far as how soft limits really are powerful. I think that they're not really discussed enough. And when guys are discussing using physical home switches or physical limit switches, a lot of the challenges that I always receive is, a physical switch, it doesn't lose position when you turn the machine off. If you're doing a lot of manual machining, physical switches are imperative, because when the machine is off, of course, the software is not being able to record what position you're at because the software is off. But if you're using the machine as a true CNC, 9 out of 10 times soft limits and offsets are by far more effective than using any type of physical switch, especially when it comes to safety, because all of these challenges that people have put towards me, no one can argue the fact that a physical switch will fail. No one can argue the fact when that switch will fail. We don't know. And when it does fail, your machine's at risk and your machine will crash inevitably. So think about it in terms like that. I think that really enlightens you to why I've always chosen to use the software. Number one, it's cheaper by far. It's much easier to set up for a novice. On top of that, it adds, like I said, digital accuracy you will never get with a switch. You'll never have the same accuracy you will get with the software. Pending, of course, we have a properly set up controller and transmission. So that being said, just some things to think about. And as far as the software losing position when you shut it down, that is not true. If you lose power in certain instances, things are possible because, again, your system is taking a jolt. But I think going through this video and showing you just how fast this is to set up, in the sense once you understand it, it's so easy to do in comparison to, dealing with switches and dealing with mounting them and dealing with wiring and money. And it's so easy to do. I really think once you weigh it, you'll see my point that this really makes a lot of sense. So the first thing I want you to do, because we're going to cover a lot of information, especially for my new guys, I want you to go grab yourself a nice legal pad and a pen, because we're going to try something different. We're going to have you guys write down some information as you're following along with the visual representation, so that you can digest this material as fast as possible. Because once you're over by your system, I'm assuming you're going to use your smartphone, and it's much easier to have that pen and pad set up there with you, because like a pilot uses when he's doing a pre-flight checklist, you'll have your pre-flight right before you're ready to take off on your system. So to me, it just makes sense, and it's a much easier method for me to learn. I've always been told that. At least my 5th grade teacher used to beat it inside my head to write everything down, and now I've become anal about it, so it does work. So what we're going to do first is discuss some of the buttons. And the first button I want to discuss here is your display mode, and we're going to discuss that. Once you hit it, of course, you're going to toggle your display mode on, and you're going to actually see your table display is up, and then once you click it again, it is off. Okay. Once we set the soft limits up, you'll want your table display up so you can see the parameters of the table. You also see there's no G-code loaded yet. And again, even though we're hitting table display, it's one feature I would have liked to seen is that they would have continued to display the table. Unfortunately, with no G-code, you don't. So at this point, you understand that display mode toggles on your table display. You can write that down. Okay. So as far as buttons go, the only buttons we're going to be concerned with is our soft limit button. It's on when there's a green light illuminated around it. It's off when there isn't. Machine coordinate button. It's on when there's a red illumination around it, and it's off when there isn't. Now, one of the big things I don't like about this actual button is the terminology used to describe it, what this button is. There's a lot of confusion as far as what this button does, and really what it does, when you actually toggle it on, you are going to find that the measurements you are given on your DROs is actually what Mach 3 believes the distance is to your table's end stops. Okay? When you click it off, if you are in your default offset, which is the offset you will find when you enter Mach 3, or should find, you're in G54. So your default Mach 3 offset is G54. Please write that down. Okay. Once you've written that down, and you know that when this machine coordinate button is off and you've just entered Mach 3, this is your offset position, G54, and you're in 0. In this case, you're represented, all of your axes are representing 0, so that would be your bottom left corner of the screen, arbitrarily, so to speak. You can set that position wherever you'd like using the process I'm about to show you, but overall, that's where I would start my G54 personally. Once you click this button once again, you're validating that you're at your end stop position, because once again, the measurement that you're receiving from this on all your DROs will be the measurement to your end stops. Click it again. Now we're back in G54. The Ref All button, and you can see these red illuminated boxes around the 0 buttons for your X, Y, Z, and A, will illuminate these green, except your A axis if you don't have it active. Do that manually if you want, but if when you hit the Ref All button, you will essentially be referencing all these axes as saying that is your home position. Okay, and when you're saying your home or your start position, okay, once again, whichever way you want to actually use the terminology to describe it. Now what we're going to find is that right now I have not Ref All'd anything, and we have no way of seeing our table here because I'm doing a simulator. You guys have your physical table in front of you. What we're going to do now is I'm going to load a piece of G code. You don't have to do this because you have your physical table in front of you. You'll understand what logic I have between doing this now. I'm just going to load Roadrunner, and you can definitely follow along if you'd like. Now again, I don't have my display mode on. If I turn it on, you can see there's nothing there. If I turn it off, it really doesn't matter. But I do have the G code to represent now what you see as the gantry, and that's these hash lines that you see right here. Over here, representing your Z axis, is an arrow. And you can see that arrow right there, and that arrow is representing, and then you see the horizontal line, which is representing basically your start 0 point for your actual Z axis. Okay, so what we're going to do is what you want to, wherever your actual machine is, okay, and at this point we're going to want to zero my machine out, and you're going to naturally be able to see where your endpoint is. You're going to want to jog over to the negative motion, using negative motion I should say, and you want to stop about 1 to 2 inches before naturally hitting the end stop. So I'm just jogging over, I'm exceeding my G code now, and that's why you see that red line there, that red vertical line. I'm just arbitrarily jogging, and we're going to go, we'll just go right about here, we'll just keep going, go to 5, so to speak. You're going to do the same thing naturally, and you're going to stop 1 to 2 inches before your end stop. Once you're done, see if I can get close. Okay. Once you're done and you're ready to call that place the start position or home position, you're going to want to click your 0 for that axis. So for X, we just zeroed it out. Okay. Now for a Y axis, we're going to do the same thing. Do the same thing. You're just going to jog over wherever you'd like to be. Actually, we want to go into negative. I'm just going to jog over negative. I'm sorry. We'll just jog over. The same way you guys can do this. Now I have guys that'll say, well, I'll just put my measurements in instead of doing this. And you can definitely do that, but you better be damn certain you're right, because if your measurement is off, you're going to have to reset it anyways. That's why I like to just jog it. Sometimes doing the manual work, it just cuts you down time on the opposite end, so to speak. So now I'm happy with where the Y is, so to speak. You'll naturally stop 1 to 2 inches before your Y's end stop on negative travel, and we will zero it. You always want to zero it out on the negative travel, because again, that's where you're going to call your 0 position. Okay. Now that's arbitrary in the sense that you can set that anywhere you'd like as far as an offset. For G54 default, I recommend always setting it at a 0 point in a negative motion. However, it's your machine. If you decide you want to actually machine from G54, it's totally up to you. I like to leave G54 as a default. I'm just entering the program, and it's going to get me back to my starting position, so to speak. or home. So right now, I'm right here where I want to be on my z-axis. I'm going to jog her up. And you can see I'm going positive, and if you watch over here, you'll see that the representation of that arrow, which is actually representing the spindle, is moving up with me as I jog. Okay, and why we're moving up is because we always home our Z, unless we're a plasma system possibly, in the positive motion for this axis. Okay, we home it at the top. We'll come up about 4 inches. Okay, about 4 inches is good. You can see your representation of the arrows all the way at the top. I'm now going to zero this out. Boom. Okay. Now what we're going to want to do, being we have our new 0 starting positions for G54, which is the default, once again, the default offset we're in, we're going to want to go the opposite direction. Okay? And this way we get an accurate measurement of where we are. So now we'll want to move over in the opposite on the X, and we'll just go. And again, I'm doing this just like you would do it. Okay, you're going to check, you're going to watch a table. I've just got the G code loaded because then it gives me the actual representation on the screen. You guys all have your physical table. You can load the G code too and do exactly like I'm doing right here. We'll come over. I'm just going to exceed the G code a little bit. We'll go about 10 inches. What do you think? Okay. And now we know our table, and this is only for your reference to put this actual measurement into the soft limit settings. That is what we're doing with this. That is why we're jogging all the way to the table extreme after finding our 0 point on the table, once again, in the negative actual motion for setting that. And the reason we do that, again, is so we have the 0 start position, and then we're measuring our maximum limit of the table. So right now I'm at, we're going to say roughly 10 inches. If you came up with an uneven number, which most likely you will, just round it down, guys. I mean, you're not going to use an entire table to machine from anyways. So stay a couple inches short, you're golden. Okay? Now a lot of questions come up. How do I get back to that exact position? Very, very simple. Go to 0 button. Your go to 0 button, whenever you have an integer on the screen, will bring you right directly back to 0. Okay? Very, very simple. Write that down. Go to 0. Whenever you have an integer that's showing anything in the positive or negative on your DROs, if you hit go to 0, it's just going to bring it right back to 0. Okay? So now what we'll do is our Y. We're going to do the same thing. We'll jog her over about 10 inches. Getting there. Okay. We're at about 10 inches again. We know that, okay, my table's basically 10 by 10. Okay, I have an X and Y travel of 10 inches. We're good. We're going to go back to 0. You guys would do the same. You'll jog your Y all the way to the positive, in positive motion until you find you're about 1 to 2 inches from the end stop once again, and then you'll know your measurement of your table so you can input it in the soft limits. Now we're going to do our Z-axis, and again, Z-axis we've already gone up, so we want to go down. And you can see when I'm jogging down now, I'm past the center point. You can see that from that horizontal line. And we're jogging down. And the thing to keep in mind with your Z is you have 2 ways to set your Z soft limit. You can set it with, if you're doing a lot of repetitive work with your end mill, the thing is always to keep in mind that your Z is never typically going to hit the table anyways. I like to do it without the end mill in. I've had guys do it with the end mill in. Once again, there's no right or wrong. It's a question of saying tomato or tomato. It's really a question of what works best for your application. I like to see the full travel of the Z. Once you set up your actual homing location for your Z as far as homing in reference to the workpiece, because our diameters are always different, the end mill's lengths are always different, you're going to find your Z's home is always going to be floating. but the soft limit still will not change. The difference is it will subtract whatever the difference in variable is of the measurement from where you are. So if you, and we'll go through that as we go through the soft limit so you guys can see exactly how that works. So right now we're just going to keep jogging down. We'll say our z-axis, and once again I'm pretending I don't have an end mill in. You guys can do this any way you'd like. We're just checking how much travel we would have, and being I don't have an end mill in, I'm going to stop naturally 1 to 2 inches before hitting the bottom of the table, or getting too close to where we're hitting the end stop, whichever way you're performing it. I'm going to go about 4 inches. That sounds good. Okay, now we're good. We know we've got about now 4 inches of negative travel. We're going to go back to 0. Process is all the same. It's good practice, guys. You'll see here come right back. Now you're basically centered position. Everything here is good. So now I know my table, okay, we're doing the simulator. I went 10, 10 by 4. So what we're going to do, whatever your table size is, we're going to come over here to homing and limits. I'm going to go over here and under soft max and soft min. First, we're going to put in the maximum travel to our end stop for each axis. So for X, we're going to put in on mine, 10. And on Y, we're going to put in 10. And on Z, it's backwards. And it's backwards because we're homing to the top of the axis. So therefore, you would zero out your soft max, because 0, again, would be the actual bottom of it, where we're at the top. So over here, you're looking at your soft min, and there you'd want to put in -4. Okay? This can be a little confusing because, again, it just takes your mind a second to really think about it. And you're thinking in terms that when you're homing really at the top of the axis. When you're actually homing as far as to your workpiece, you're homing at the bottom. So just write that down. You always home the machine when you're not machining to the top of the axis, as far as where your positive integer is. When you're homing to your workpiece, that's a different type of homing. You're actually putting in the actual depth and as far as the thickness of the piece using either a touch plate or setting your tool. So that's something that you guys can work on as far as how you want to interpret that, but writing it down, like I said, it just makes things a little less confusing. So once these actual are set up, we're going to set up once again our soft mins, and that will be 0 for our X and 0 for our Y. And why do we do that? Because if we set them at 0, we know we're never going to exceed 0. Okay, 0 is, you can't go lower than 0. It is what it is, and 0 would be on the G54 offset where we are right now. It's going to be right at the bottom of the table. Any lower than that, you're hitting the end stop. Okay. Slow zone, very simple explanation. 1 inch measurement is essentially telling you that once you come within 1 inch of the end stop, it's going to begin down to 20% of what the actual jog speed normally is. Okay. I don't tamper with these numbers. I also don't manipulate these. If you want to increase this number, that's fine. I would not decrease it. Okay. There's no reason stressing the equipment, and realistically, 1 inch is just the right amount, honestly, that you're pretty much set up. Home off is an advanced feature. If you want to try it out, you can. Basically, what it does is it'll allow you to put a differential space between where the table is in reference to the end stop. So if you put, let's say, 2 inches here on your X, and you were to hit ref all, it would actually go 2 inches just above where your X's endpoint would be. Okay, and it's hard to explain. It's easier to do. If you want to try it out after you set up your soft limits, you're more than welcome to try it. Because once soft limits are set, guys, you're protected. That's the beauty of this. You can play with it at your own pace, and you're golden. As long as you validate they're on, you're good. The only other setting here we're going to manipulate is our home neg, and that's letting you know that you will be homing towards the negative or in negative motion of the X and the Y. So we want to check these. Meaning we're always going towards 0. Okay, we're always moving in a negative motion. Over here, your Z-axis, you don't need to check this because, again, we're always homing our Z to the top of the axis, which is in the positive motion. Therefore, you would not actually check this. Auto 0 is only reference to reference all. And now that we have this all set, we can now click OK. Okay, so what usually happens is now most guys say, well, what the hell is going on? If I engage soft limits, I'm going to get an error. Here's the error I get. Machine out of limits for soft limits. Basically what that's telling you is you haven't referenced anything yet. And we could tell that because If I go to keep doing this, you're not doing anything. And on top of that, you've got these red boxes, which means you haven't defined your home position by hitting, or your start position by hitting reference all home. If we come over here to machine coordinates now, this is what's interesting. We jogged everything over, and once we jogged over and we set in a negative area where we wanted to call our G54 home position or start position, you can see we're at 0 when we're under G54. Once I hit machine coordinates and I'm measuring the distance from my end stop of the table, I'm now reflecting a negative integer, and a positive integer. This is because of, this is what Mach is now saying, well, you know what, you're still this distance away from your end stop, okay? When we really aren't. We want to say this is our actual new home position. So to actually define our starting home position, now is the time to hit ref all home, and then you will find that the 0x, 0y, and 0z axis boxes will become illuminated green. Also, your integers have now changed. You also saw that the representation of the gantry has now shifted all the way over up towards the top right of the actual toolpath box, and that's just a direct representation right now. Mainly it's off because we have not regenerated our toolpath. We'll do that in a second. What we want to validate now after doing that is clicking machine coordinates, and you can see now that our G54 offset is still representing now these positive integers. It's carried it over because it took all of those integers and said, okay, we're going to shift now and say this is your end stop position, but this is the real measurement you are under this offset. Okay, it's going to carry those integers over to whatever offset you're on whenever you do a ref all. So now what we want to do to accurately get these set is hit 0 on each axis, and you can see how everything is changing on the screen. Now it just totally went off the screen. There's no more representation graphically. Excuse me, let me grab a drink real quick. There's no more graphic representation of the actual gantry, and it will come back once again once we actually regenerate our toolpath. But what you'll notice now is that if we hit machine coordinate and we hit machine coordinate again, when we're in G54, it's at 0. When we hit it again, and now we're representing the distance to the end stop of the table, you can see you're also in 0, which means now you are set for, or I should say, we're set in the configuration that G54 is basically at its default location, which would be the bottom left corner of the table, due to the way I set it up. Once again, if you set it differently in position to the table, if you set it, let's say, up here or over there, that's where it would actually say G54 is. Once again, it's arbitrary. I'm setting mine up this way. I suggest you start it out this way, and then you can always change it once you have a thorough understanding of what's going on. So now what we're going to do, being we've already defined our machine coordinates are set already at 0, and our standard G54 offset is once again set at 0, we will click Regen Toolpath. And now you see the representation of our actual gantry come back. You're also going to hit display mode, and now you still don't see our table yet displayed. That's okay. We're going to come up here once we've done all this, and we're going to say Save Settings. Boop. Done. So right now, even though display mode is not being displayed, mainly it's because I didn't come out of the software and go back in. That's okay. It's totally okay. We're going to come over here now, and now we are able to engage our soft limits, and they are active, and we will test that just like you will test it. We're going to move towards the center of the table, and now you can start seeing a dotted line which now represents the parameter of the table. Okay, I'm going to jog now our X back. I'm going to go back to negative, and she will start slowing down as she should. And there you go. Now, you guys, when you get close enough, you'll see that this will get really slow and you get really tired of waiting. Just hit go to 0, and you're set. Okay? So, once again, one of the other messages that comes up that you'll definitely encounter is a Safe Z turned off, ignoring Safe Z move. Don't panic from that. All that's telling you is that your Safe Z setup is not set up. You can choose to set this up. Your global settings allow Safe Z moves. You can check this box to allow it. And then basically it's asking you, well, Do you want to safe Z DRO is in the machine coordinate measurement, or do you want it to be in the safe Z DRO in the work coordinate measurement? Or you can do a safe Z in an incremental rise. You can then put in that incremental rise in measurement, and then over here go to safe Z when the stop button is hit, which is actually a really cool feature. And all the safe Z is actually doing is allowing the Z axis to come up as you jog, so it doesn't crash into whatever substrate you have on the table, because again, your depth of the substrate, the thickness, is going to possibly interfere with where your end mill is. So it's something to think about. Once again, I'm not going to get into detail on this because it's pretty self-explanatory. And once again, once you have your soft limit set, you can play with it. You know, your table's set and safe. These are all the cool settings that you can play with and see just how advanced it really is to use, and it's really not hard. So once again, I'm a big stickler. I don't like my status bar to be populated with any type of messages, mainly because it's confusing as you machine. Sometimes you'll think there's an error, and it can, as you're learning, it can be really confusing. So I always reset that so this is clean. You can see now where we are. Table display is now up. Now I'm going to show you how to set an actual offset, because the offsets to me in Mach 3 are truly where you're going to home from to machine. And it's a repeatable machining position. Write that down. Your offsets are your repeatable machining positions. Very important. You can call them offsets. You can call them your starting point. I call them my home, because when I run my G55, that's where I plan on machining over and over and over again, and it's that simple. So we're going to set that now really quick. First, we want to validate one more time. Get you guys in the habit. You don't have to do it, but I like to be in the habit. I'm anal retentive when it comes to this because I care about my equipment. I will always validate my machine coordinate position so I know where my end stop is, and we also validate once again and know we're in G54. You can see that right here, and we also see we're zeroed all the way across the board. So now we're ready to set our first offset. Now guys, you have over 200 offsets. If you don't have Mach 3's user manual, you can definitely message me. I have it. It's becoming more rare online to find. It's a very long manual, and to say the least, some of it's confusing. So I recommend, if you're playing with soft limits, the best way to learn it, once they're set and your table is safe, play with it. But play with it safely. This way you're learning at your own pace, so to speak, and then you have that hands-on experience. Manuals only work, I find, when you have hands-on experience. I only work hands-on. Myself, I always pick things up better that way. I went to school, and going to school, if it was, you know, a lot of book work and stuff, I pick it up over time, but not nearly as quick as dealing with my hands. So everybody's different. Manage your workload based upon how fast you can pick things up. That's what I recommend. So right now, you can see our current work offset, of course, is the default, which is G54. We're going to set G55. All you do is press it. Now you're under G55. And we right now, I had a default offset already set. What we're going to do is, you can see that it's at -6, but over here it's at +6 and +6, and that's because right now where the table is, it's at the bottom corner of the table, which is reflecting G54. When we move to this offset, we will be actually moving 6 inches in the positive direction. Okay, so if I wanted to set an offset, okay, this offset's already set, but if I wanted to set it, all I would do is 0 the X, 0 the Y, and 0 the Z, and it would carry all those integers right there, and that's it. Now all I'm going to do, being I already have mine set, I'm going to come over here, and you can see it's reflecting your -6. And right now, if I hit machine coordinates, I'm still at 0, and the main reason I am is because why? Now I'm in G55. So in order for me to be at 0, once again, I've got to move in the positive motion to actually hit 0 position, because I'm -6. So in order to do that, it's very simple. I'm going to click go to 0. You will see, there it comes, right there. Your actual gantry just shot up in the bottom left corner, and now it's still represented incorrectly on the screen, and that's mainly because we have not, once again, hit our regen toolpath. Don't panic. It will come back. All you have to do now, before we hit regen, is we're going to come over here and hit our machine coordinate, and you can see now you're in +6 and +6 on the X and +6 on the Y inches from our actual end stop. Okay, that's what it's telling us. So, or at least that's where Mach thinks we are. Okay, which is good. That's what we want. Now we're going to hit machine coordinate again, and now we're ready. We've already validated. We're in G55. We're zeroed out. We've moved everything over because we hit go to 0. We're representing 6 inches in the positive motion on the X and 6 inches in the positive motion on the Y, and you're set to go. We will click that again, and now click Regen Toolpath, and we should be in the center. And there you go. Actually, I'm wrong. We're not in the center because 6 inches, we set our table at 10 inches, so we're slightly off center. Either way. Interesting thing, this may happen to you too. You'll find that your G-code may not be centered where you want it on the table, okay? And if you are penetrating any of this dotted line anywhere around the perimeter of the table, you will get this message if you decided to go to machine. And believe it or not, I've had many people actually go to do that. So let's just see what happens if I click on it. Soft limit warning, and it's warning you on the X max. Well, it's obvious right now you're over the perimeter of the table, therefore she's warning you. If you click yes, you are going to have a heap of trouble. So naturally you would click no. If you ever get that message, naturally click no, because there's something wrong, and always pay attention to your status bar, because the software will always let you know where to look. Okay, so we're going to reset that once again to keep our bar clean. You can see where we are right here. If I wanted to reset the offset, okay, real simple. Now I'm doing it with G55 because there's no reason to go anymore. It's the same principle over and over again on any other offset. If I want to reset G55 at 5 and 5 inches, okay, what we'll do, we wouldn't do it. I like to go out of here, but we could do it either way. Right now you can see where we are. If once again you jog over, and I've said this many times, but there are some questions that I get. If you jog out of position and want to get back to home position, the only button you need to worry about is go to 0. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to G54. We are currently once again in G55. We moved everything over. Okay, you can see now you're representing positive 6 away again because we are still in G55. I'm going to click offset. I'm going to go to G54. Boom. You can see we're representing positive 6. That's where we are, and we're going to go to 0. Okay, and there's the positive 6 once again. Now you can see the representation of the gantry is totally off the screen. G-code's up in the corner where it was. And now what we're going to do is hit go to 0. I'm going to grab a drink. We're still being represented incorrectly on the screen physically until we hit Regen Toolpath. And now you're in the bottom left corner of the screen where your actual position is. And to validate that, we'll switch over to our machine coordinates, which once again are the distance to our end limits of the table. So you can see I'm at 0, which is correct because I'm right against the edge of the table. I click it again, and you can see I'm back in G54, and I'm also at 0, so we're good to go. So if I want to now change my offset just to show it live, what I would do, once again, I'm going to reset this because that drives me crazy when there's anything in the status bar. And now I'm going to come over here to my offset, and I'm going to come over here to, or excuse me, I'm going to go to MIDI. I've got to reset. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm going to come over here, and on my X, I'm going to want it to move 5 inches positive. So we'll go right here. And you can type that in, guys. Just type in whatever motion you want to do. And you can do it with a positive or a negative integer. If you've never done this before, you can go right into your MIDI. I'm going to go right here and do 5 inches in my positive as well. You can see where the representation, it still doesn't look correct. But now we're in the center of the table because I had a 10-inch table, so to speak. And now what we're going to do is come over to our offset. You can see where we are on our offset. And I'm going to go to G55. Boom. And I'm going to go, and you can see it says -1 because we actually set it at 6 inches, so it subtracted the difference. So now what I'm going to do to set this, very simple, like I was explaining, 1, 2, 3. Everything is set. There you go. There's your 5-inch. You've just changed your G55, and now you're all set to go. You'll come over here to program. You're once again at 0. Even though it's not being correctly graphically illustrated on the screen, it's still showing G54 in the bottom left corner. If we hit this again, you can see you're 5 inches away from your actual X and Y as far as being the end table limits. So if we click this again, you are now ready to regen your toolpath because we can see up here we are in G55 and everything is zeroed. We'll click this, and now you're dead center in the table. Even though the G code is, once again, it's a large G code and it's actually larger than our table limit. but you can definitely see where I'm going with this. This is how easy this is to use. And imagine if you had 3 or 4 offsets actually programmed, how fast you could cycle between the two. You know, I see guys bouncing off their switches and doing everything. If you look at how fluid this is, it's a smoother motion, and I think once it's learned, it becomes almost too easy. It's really just a question of what you're comfortable using, you know. Overall, though, another thing you may encounter, and this is something I want to show you guys. I'm going to go back to G54 now. Once again, you're all the way at the top left corner because it's going to move everything down. Now, when I go to 0, you're going to see it's going to come down here again. You see our +5 because we changed G55 over. Always validate your offset over here. And you can see we're now in G54, but we haven't zeroed anything. So we're going to go to 0. And it's going to come right to the center. And it's at that point until I regen. And you're done. We can check our machine coordinates, check the endpoint limits measurement, and you can see once again you're at 0 and 0 under G54. You're golden. Now, a lot of guys will load a piece of G code because they're excited, and I don't blame them. And what they'll do is they'll go to run it, and they'll think, okay, I'm set to go, everything is good, and you know, this is where I'm at, and realistically everything looks good, but what they forget is if they didn't actually go to touch off on their actual workpiece that they're going to mill. Some guys want to test an air cut, which I highly recommend if it's a new machine, and they'll leave their Z at the top of it, and if they go to cycle start, they're going to find a soft limit warning because your soft warning is on the Z max, meaning you're at the top of the Z, therefore you don't have enough motion in the positive integer to do anything. So again, you'll have to lower that in order to get to that point. So soft limit warning continue, once again, you wouldn't. If you lower her, if you bring her down, let's say 2 inches, you will be golden, and then you would home it. Okay, and you can home that once again either by zeroing it or, again, there's a couple different ways. I personally would use my auto tool touch plate. That's up to you. Most guys are using that. You can zero it out any way you like, but that is the premise. You have to have enough axis travel to use your Z. And even though everything here looks good, and that's usually what the question is driven from, is because everything as far as being within the parameters of the table seem to be there, except your Z-axis you can't see. There's nothing representing, like over here, representing where your Z-axis limit travel is. So again, it would have been cool if they would have put a dotted line up here so you know, okay, if I exceed that, I'm screwed. You just don't get it. So keep that in mind, just something to think about. Overall, though, I mean, it just shows you how fluid this is. And once you come over here, I'm going to reset this again. Okay, I want to cover another topic, and that topic that's been brought up numerous times is that Mach doesn't know where it is. Well, that's not true, and I'm saying it doesn't know where it is when you turn the system off. Okay, let me show you exactly what I mean. I'm going to jog arbitrarily over. I'm still in G54. I'm just jogging anywhere. It doesn't matter. Okay. You are going to see I'm, 2 inches up, moving positive in this area. Let's say I close out my G code. Now this is something I highly recommend you guys do as far as testing your system, going through a new setup. This is a process I highly recommend. I would go and actually close the G code then after you've actually jogged arbitrarily on your table. You're going to close it. Once you close it, even though you have no table represented, you know you're off center of your G54. You're not at your start or home position. Okay? Everything is set though. Soft limits is on. Everything is looking good. If I close out of here, remember these integers. If I close out of here, end session, yes. Now if you get a fixture save message, being we've changed our fixtures, yes. Anything you change in settings, you always want to save preferably. I mean, I wouldn't imagine you wouldn't unless it's a temp job, but again, I always recommend saving it. You never know. I'm going to enter it again. You can see these integers did not change, guys. Okay? If you click reset, okay, soft limits is still active. We are not referenced on any of these points. Okay? If I go to reference these points, if I hit ref all, you're screwed because you're off center from your G54. Okay? In order to get us back to our G54 normal position, which is in the corner of the table, okay? And how we know that, right now you don't have any table being represented because I did not turn on, or excuse me, I don't have a G-code loaded to represent then the table. I'll do that right now just for demonstration purposes. In your case, you'll have your table and you'll see where your gantry actually is located. So I'll just load that Roadrunner again. Now you'll see where we were, just the same position we were before. If I want to get her back over into the corner, guess what I got to hit? Yeah, I know you know because you wrote it down. You're going to hit go to 0, and there you go. Now you're back in the same start position. Mach remembered exactly where it was, and now what you're going to do is hit your machine coordinates again. It's a good practice to get into, even though you already know you didn't reference anything. It just gets your mind in that muscle motion, so to speak, as far as that mind-muscle connection. And once you're back there, you can click it, like I said, click it again, cycle back, go back into G54 where the button is not illuminated, validate it, and now hit ref all. Once you do that, you are back in the same position, and Mach is ready to go. If we want to go back to G55, boom, boom, everything is set. We know we're good. We're going to hit go to 0. You'll see this come right up again, the graphical representation of where your gantry is. We will now regenerate our toolpath. After checking our machine coordinates, we know we're at the 5 and 5 in the positive direction, and that's because that's where we set our G55. We validate our G55 up here. Click this, regen toolpath, and you're dead center in the table. Okay. So we've already proven Mach memorizes where your location is. Once again, there are variables. There are things that can happen. Weird things can happen. Anything can happen. But in all my years of using Mach, the main thing that happens when you're dealing with these settings is the fact that you will be dealing with, if you're dealing with manual operations for machining and you have hand wheels on your system, that can definitely throw the system off if Mach is off. If it's on, it's still going to throw it off because then you're fighting the motors. So you wouldn't do that anyways. I've had clients actually do that as well. So some things you'll find out the hard way. The main thing is to really understand the gravity of what you're getting involved with. Mach 3 is very powerful. If it's used correctly, it works extremely well. It's the process in which you use it that will make you fundamentally sound and being super, super capable and efficient. I can't emphasize that enough. If you look at the speed, if we go through this process, and even if I'm checking it here, you can see I'm in G55 right here, and I said, oh no, I couldn't. Let's say I was just loading this myself, and I said, nope, you know what, I'm exceeding there. I would have to machine at the bottom corner. All I would have to do is come over my offset, come back to G54, go to program, come over here to go to 0, so I can now regenerate the toolpath in the corner. Done. And there I go. I'm ready to go. So you can see how fast you can move back and forth and back and forth. It's very, very fluid, and it saves you a lot of time and hassle. This way works extremely well. Once again, if you're using your system as a true CNC, if you're finding, and then even if you did have to change settings, because I get asked that question too, and one of the things I want you guys to really do now, especially now that you got your pen and pad, write down as you're setting up your table these settings. Record them. Take a screenshot. Hell, we've got technology. Use it. I mean, if you take these settings and you copy them, to reset your table up is minutes. I mean, really, it's not a big issue to do, and it really pays overall. And sometimes it's good to just practice these things, because the faster and more efficient you become, especially if you're running a business, this will become so fluid you could go right through it. If there is ever an event that requires a reset up, you've got it. And that's the main thing. Okay. Now, again, the soft limits are very smart in the sense that if you're moving and you accidentally, like I said, if you come over, because I get guys that'll sometimes say, you know, if I move over and I forget, even on my Z, let's say they're jogging positive and then they go to move up on their Z. Now you can see, here's another mistake that'll usually come up. You hear how it keeps chiming? Now most of us already know why it keeps chiming, because we've already set our 0 and we're 1,000th over where our 0 is set. So until you can't reset this like standard, because if you go to reset it, you're going to keep getting the same chime. Why is that? Because we have our soft limit button enabled. So the easiest way to do that, you're going to click that. We're going to hit our soft limit button. turning off soft limits so that you can carefully hit the reset button and bring down the axis so it's no longer exceeding the soft limit parameter. Once you do that, you can then engage soft limit again, and you'll find you are once again protected. Very simple. And it did its job. I just hit go to 0 and you're golden. So I hope this video has been helpful, guys. I think that this video has covered basically everything you're going to find when you're setting your system up. It also shows you the power of using an offset. The offsets to me are golden. Most guys are going to use them all the time. Once you've figured out how fast and fluid things work, it's a very simple way to do it. And once again, when you're turning off your system, and this is something I've never seen this process discussed, I like to go through the same process I do when I'm turning it on, and as far as validating everything, always validate that you're ending in the same offset, preferably that you entered the system in, which will be default G54. That's my preferred way of actually beginning and ending a session. I'll go to G54, validate it, come over to machine coordinates again. You can see you're zeroed, and of course you'd physically see where your table is. So I mean, you guys would have that luxury. Right now I'm doing a simulator, so it's just in parallel to what you're actually seeing. Once you do your validation up here, validate your machine coordinates so you know where your end stop is. Of course, validating it physically on the table. We'll click over. I have a G code loaded. If you had a G code loaded, what I would recommend you do is unload it. You are now all set. Leave your table display on, of course, and then all you would do is close out of Mach. And you guys are good. So again, guys, I hope that this video has been helpful. I hope that you've learned a lot. If you do have any questions, please don't be afraid to ask. Once again, I will be putting in the description how to watch the actual video on axis calibration. I want to introduce another new product from Kano Labs. I wanted to discuss that. Many of you guys already know from my name on YouTube that I'm a gearhead, and I can't emphasize it enough. I am. I just tried another chemical from Kano Laboratories after I started working with them, and I love silicroyl. It's been a huge hit. I know it's helped a lot of my clients out. I wanted to introduce another product that they have after I've tried it in now about 6 vehicles. It's done an amazing job. It's called Cream. And what it is an internal engine cleaner, and also it cleans, believe it or not, your fuel system as well. It's a lot of guys compare it, or I should say it's in the same realm as Seafoam in the sense that it can go in both your engine internally and also cleaning actual your fuel system. All I have to say is you've got to watch the private video that I made actually covering the forums that actually tested this product out. And not only has there been lots of lab tests done to it, but this product is absolutely amazing in what it's done. There's a 62-page article post in numerous forms. One is in Bob is the Oil Guy. Another one is in VWTDI. There's just so many of them, and that's why I did a private video on the listing. I'll put that there too so you guys can check it out. But if you have an older vehicle, if you have a lawnmower, if you have a weed eater that's old, you want the engine to be like new, I'm telling you now, test this stuff out. I've made it in smaller quantities than you'd have to purchase direct. That saves you guys hazmat fees. The shipping is much cheaper, and this way you're golden and you're good to go. And I can't emphasize it enough, guys. Everybody that has been subscribing to the channel, I truly appreciate. I love you guys, and we continue to grow. We're growing together, and the main thing is that we're learning together as well. And I can't emphasize that enough. Everybody that is part of this channel, I hope, is always helping somebody that needs help. The idea is to pay it forward, so to speak. That's what we're trying to do. Once again, if you guys do have any questions about this video or anything, you can message me at storm2313@gmail.com or contact me, of course, through my eDealers Direct store on eBay, and you'll be good to go. Once again, guys, have a great weekend. Take care.